Let's dive into the epic finale game of the Norway Chess 2023 played between Hikaru Nakamura and Fabiano Caruana. So, Hikaru started the game with e4, Fabiano played e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, knight f6, pretty standard opening, right? And now, Hikaru is surprised with his next move because he played knight to g5, going straight for the fried liver attack. Fabi defends solidly with d5, blocking the attack. So e takes d5 and now knight to a5, attacking this bishop over here. So bishop goes to b5 check. Fabi blocks the check with c6, pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, and now bishop drops to d3. White is in a slightly better position here because his king is ready to castle. Black has an isolated pawn on the c file and one of his knight is on the side of the board. Fabi plays knight to d5, centralizing his knight as well as opening lines for the queen to attack this nicely placed knight over here. So knight drops back to f3, attacking the weak pawn. And now Fabi plays bishop d6, developing a minor piece from the king side, preparing his king to castle as well as providing protection to this attacked pawn. Hikaru castles and now Fabi plays knight to f4, attacking white's light squared bishop and threatening to ruin white's pawn structure over here. Now here it is really hard to save this bishop because if Hikaru gets his bishop on the e2 square, then the knight is going to capture this bishop anyway and then queen will capture the knight, and such a move is just wasting time on white's front. So that is why Hikaru didn't get his bishop on the e2 square, but he rather chose to focus on the development of his other minor pieces, and that is why in the game he played knight to c3. So as you can see, it's an open game over here, and since it's Fabi's turn, so he cannot just let go of this beautiful bishop over here. So obviously he takes this bishop. So he plays knight takes bishop, pawn takes knight, and now black castles. And here Hikaru plays b3 so that he can develop his other minor piece on the b2 square and control this beautiful long diagonal over here. Fabi activates his rook, rook to e8, rook to e1. And here Fabi took around 14 minutes and then played the move c5 with an idea that he can drop his knight to this square and then ultimately get to this square where it's centralized and controlling more important squares on the board. But this move isn't the best in the game because that way you are allowing white to play bishop a3, pinning this pawn to the bishop, and then white can add more pressure on this weak pawn by playing knight e4 and then rook to c1. Hikaru obviously did not miss this golden opportunity, so he immediately played bishop a3, putting pressure on this pawn. Fabi played knight to c6. As expected, Hikaru played knight to e4, not only double attacking this pawn, but also threatening to capture this dark squared bishop in an open game. Fabi obviously was not interested in losing his bishop pair, so he took his bishop to the f8 square, while also revealing the queen's attack on this weak doubled pawn over here. And here Hikaru played rook to c1, getting a third attacker on this pawn. Now I know many of you here must be wondering that why did Hikaru play rook to c1? He could have just directly captured this pawn with any one of these pieces, right? Because white's two of pieces are attacking this pawn and black's only one piece is protecting this pawn. So why not just directly capture this pawn? So if you don't do proper calculations and directly just go on capturing this pawn with any one of your minor pieces, then you will lose advantage in the game. How? Let's see. Let's say you capture this pawn with your knight. So knight takes pawn. Notice how your knight is badly pinned by this dark squared bishop over here to your bishop. So here black can activate his other light squared bishop with bishop g4, pinning your other knight to the queen. If you play h3 attacking this bishop, then bishop takes knight and queen takes bishop, and then knight to d4 attacking the queen as well as threatening to play knight to c2 and thereby forking three of black's pieces. So queen has to come back to d1 square, and now the knight goes to the b5 square attacking this bishop over here and asking him to leave the defense of this knight. Obviously bishop will not do that, so bishop comes to b4 square. Black attacks this bishop one more time with a5, and now what can white do? Though white is up in material by 2 points, but quickly he's gonna lose one of his pieces, as well as most importantly, black now has the initiative in the game. If knight goes to b7 square, attacking the queen, then queen can come on the b6 square attacking the knight. Notice now two of white's pieces are under attack. So bishop takes f8 is forced, king takes f8, and now look at this knight. He has no safe squares to go. This knight is badly trapped in the enemy's territory. And if you try to save the knight by playing queen to f3, then that's not gonna help because Fabi can play rook a to b8, double attacking this knight, and now this knight is gonna go off the board. So let's go back. So taking this pawn with the knight would be a very bad move. Now let's see what happens if we take the pawn with our bishop. So if we take the pawn with our bishop, thinking that this bishop is safe here because it's protected by our knight, then you would be totally wrong because black can attack your knight with the move f5. Now obviously if you move the knight you will lose your bishop. So what will you play? You will go for exchanges of pieces. So bishop takes bishop, black will play pawn takes knight attacking another piece of yours, and notice this piece is already under attack. So you can't save both of them. So you will capture this g7 pawn, king takes bishop, and now rook takes e4. And after all of these exchanges, black has got very good advantage in the game because first of all, the position is open and he has a bishop and white doesn't have any bishop. Secondly, he has 5 pieces to play his game with as compared to white's 4 pieces. Thirdly, white has a weakness on the d3 square plus an isolated pawn on d2. You may call it a backward pawn as well. And though black's king does look a little bit exposed here, but honestly white doesn't have any clear attacking plan against the black king. So even though white is up in material by 1 point, but the both situation is totally in favor of black. So let's go back. So that is why capturing with this bishop or with this knight would make white lose his advantage in the game. That is why in the actual game, Hikaru played rook to c1, getting a third attacker on this pawn. And here Fabi really started feeling the pressure. He can't really protect this pawn and he's playing the finale game of the tournament, and if he loses this match, then he loses in the tournament. And out of sheer pressure, he made a mistake of playing f5. Why is it a mistake? Well, because you're just helping white, you're just forcing white to capture this pawn with this knight. So if f5 is a mistake, then what would have been the best move? So here the best move would have been knight to b4, blocking the attack of one of the attackers. And if bishop takes this knight, then you can take back with your pawn, and suddenly the pawn which was isolated on the c file can now be protected with your a pawn over here. But in the game, f5 was played. So Hikaru took this pawn with his knight. So knight takes pawn, and now Fabi played queen d5, centralizing his queen and adding one more attacker to this knight. Hikaru played queen to c2, intending to get his queen on this square and then offering a trade of queens, and it's quite obvious that he's playing this way because if you look at the material, Hikaru is 2 points up in the game, and when you're up in material, what do you do? It's a basic chess principle that we have learned, that when you're up in material, you simply start trading of pieces so that the material advantage you have in the game gets amplified in the endgame. So queen to c2 by Hikaru, and Fabi played rook to d8. Hikaru plays queen to c4, offering a trade of queens, and now queen takes queen and rook takes queen. Now I know you must be wondering why did he take back with his rook and not with this pawn, because ideally if you see, white has a double pawns over here. If he takes back with his pawn, then that move would have corrected his pawn structure, right? But it isn't easy how it looks. So let's go back and let me show you the other variation. So if white had made the mistake of capturing with his pawn over here, then black would have played e4, attacking this knight over here and forcing him to leave the defense of this weak d2 pawn over here. And notice this knight now doesn't have access to any of these squares except for these two. So if knight goes to h4, then it's a horrible mistake because black can simply play g5 and attack this knight, and now this knight is trapped. Let's go back. So the only option for this knight now is to go on the g5 square, to which black can play h6, attacking this knight one more time, and now knight comes back to h3 square to the side of the board We know that knight on the rim is grim, and now black can play rook takes d2. And here we have reached a situation where technically white is up a pawn, but his situation is worse than what it looks on the board. Because if you see, this knight has come to the side of the board. This knight is technically pinned to this bishop over here. This rook has entered the second rank. He's deep inside your territory and is now attacking this weak a2 pawn. Your bishop can move anywhere, because if he does, then you will lose your knight, and your rooks are not on any of the open files on the board. So let's go back. So that is why taking this queen with your pawn would be a very bad idea, and that is why Hikaru took the queen with his rook. Fabi plays rook to d5, centralizing his rook as well as getting one more attacker to this pinned piece. Hikaru plays rook e to c1, doubling up on the c file as well as adding protection to this pinned piece. And now bishop d6, bishop b2, knight e7, rook 4 to c2, rook b8, d4. Hikaru is anyway up in material, so he's just trying to get his only weakness over here, and that is why he plays d4. So pawn takes d4, knight takes d4, a5. Fabi is desperately trying to do some counterplay on the queen side, but Hikaru plays knight to f3, now h6, stopping any plans of this knight to come on the g5 square, and Hikaru plays knight to a4, stopping black's a pawn to advance further. Fabi plays bishop to a6, activating on a better diagonal, knight to c3, attacking the rook. The only safe place where the rook can now go to is the c5 square. Hikaru attacks the rook with his bishop, so bishop to a3, and now rook moves to c6. And now bishop takes bishop, because Hikaru is up in material, so all he needs to do is just trade off all the pieces on the board and go for an easy win. So rook takes bishop, knight to a4, stopping the pawn one more time, knight d5, centralizing the knight, rook comes to c6, asking for a trade of rooks and also attacking this bishop over here. And here Fabi played rook takes c6, which is another inaccurate move, but if you look at his time clock, he has just 14 minutes, Hikaru has 25 minutes, and he is 2 pawns down in the game, and this is the finale match. He knows that he have made a lot of mistakes and he's about to lose. So obviously all of this is affecting his ability to think clearly in the game. So he played rook takes c6, which is not a good move. Best move here would have been rook b to d8, so that in case this rook takes over here, then this rook can take back with his rook, and also white would not have this doubled rooks on the c file. But in the game, Fabi made a mistake of trading rooks over here. So rook takes rook, and now knight to b4, attacking the rook as well as this unprotected pawn over here. Rook goes to d6, bishop b7, knight c3, rook e8, h4, and now Fabi made another mistake of playing f4. Like seriously, what was he thinking? I mean, with this move you do know that he is under tremendous pressure. He's feeling the heat. He knows that he's about to lose this game as well as this tournament, and he has clearly now lost the ability to take good decisions in the game. And so now after f4, Hikaru played rook to d4, attacking this pawn, and Fabi defended this pawn with rook to f8. Like seriously, he has gone on the defensive side. You know what would have been a better move? A better move here would have been g5, because if h takes g5, then instead of capturing this pawn first over here, black could have played bishop takes knight, pawn takes bishop. So white's pawn structure has been messed up one more time, and now you can capture this g pawn with your h pawn. This would have been slightly better for black, but black was under pressure, so he made a mistake of playing rook to f8. Hikaru plays knight to e5, rook goes to e8, attacking the knight, knight to c4, attacking this pawn over here. And now since this pawn is also under attack by this rook, so Fabi played f3. So pawn takes pawn, bishop takes pawn, and king to h2, knight c2, attacking the rook, rook d3, attacking the bishop, bishop goes to a8, king comes on g3, it's an end game, and white is making absolutely sure to activate his king and make him an active piece into this fight. Black tries to activate his king too by playing king to h7. Hikaru plays knight to e3, offering a trade of knights. Knight goes to b4, attacking the rook. rook d6, stopping the advance of the king, knight to c6, knight c to d5, rook f8, knight c7 attacking the bishop, bishop b7, knight goes to e6 attacking the rook, rook goes to f7, f4, bishop a8, h5, rook a7, a3, king g8, f5, rook e7. Black is trying hard, but it's of no use because white plays king f4, rook a7, d4, and here Fabi resigned. Look how beautifully these pawns are controlling this square over here. White has a pass pawn. His pieces are more active in the game than Black's counterpart, as well as White is up in material by 2 points. And not to forget that White has a strong active king over here as compared to Black's king. All of these little things adds up to White's winning advantage in the game, and therefore Fabi resigned at this point. Join the channel's membership program to learn from more such beautiful games. And here is the question of the day for you. Let me see how many of you are talented enough to solve this difficult puzzle. So the question is, what is the best move for Black? Let me know your answers in the comments box, and do not forget to like my video and subscribe to my channel.